Blood is a first-person shooter video game developed by Monolith Productions and published by GT Interactive Software. The full version was released for the PC on May 31, 1997. The game follows the story of Caleb, an early 20th century gunslinger seeking revenge against the dark god Tchernobog. It features a number of occult and horror themes. This includes an arsenal of weapons ranging from the mundane to the bizarre, numerous enemies and liberal amounts of graphic violence. The Blood franchise was continued with 2 official expansion packs titled Plasma Pack and Cryptic Passage. Later, a sequel entitled Blood 2, The Chosen was released on October 31, 1998. Gameplay: Blood is a first-person shooter, with the player controlling Caleb as he fights through hordes of various enemies as he traverses the levels of the game. In single-player mode, the player leads Caleb in his quest for revenge against his former master by navigating the levels of each separate episode, looking for an exit, until the boss level is reached and a showdown against a large opponent takes place. Each episode can be played separately, in no particular order, albeit these are organized to follow the game's storyline. Blood's gameplay is similar to other classic FPS games like Doom, in that the player is required to activate switches and/or seek keys to proceed through the levels. On larger maps, finding up to 6 different keys may be required. A classic FPS feature which is rarely employed in Blood is the teleporter. The player's progress is further complicated by different types of traps, including the classic crashing blocks, explosive barrels, or lava pits, the occasional jumping puzzle, and combination lock doors. Blood was also one of the early FPS games to feature alternate, or secondary attack modes for its weapons. Most weapons in Blood have 2 different methods of dealing damage, in contrast to previous games in which each weapon had only a single type of attack. Another concept added in Blood is super secret rooms, areas which are very hard to find and/or reach but merit large rewards. Weapons, artifacts and bonus items appear in Blood. Firearms include a flare gun, sawed-off shotgun and a Tommy gun, explosive weapons like dynamite and a napalm launcher, a shock rifle named after inventor Nikola Tesla, and several dark magic artifacts, including a voodoo doll, and most uniquely, aerosol canisters that can be used as flamethrowers or bombs. It also features a pickup known as Guns Akimbo, that allowed the player to dual-wield certain weapons. The game features a large quantity of creatures throughout its levels, and most of them are absolutely hostile to Caleb, including human members of the Cabal and creatures fighting for the dark god Tchernobog. The most common of these enemies are various types of zombies, undead beast butchers that throw meat cleavers, and Tommy gun-wielding, dynamite-tossing cultists. There are also more difficult enemies such as fire-breathing hellhounds, gargoyles, giant spiders and powerful sub-bosses. The game also features a lesser class of enemies often referred to as nuisance enemies that are not considered threats individually, but will try nonetheless to harm Caleb and can be deadly if encountered in large numbers. Blood features multiplayer options. When it was released, internet play was not well established, therefore Blood relied upon the standard modem, LAN or serial cable connections for multiplayer. Modem and serial cable connections only allow 2-player games, while an IPX network connection can support up to 8 players. This can easily be achieved on a variety of platforms that support DOSBox and its IPX modes, coupled with VPN software such as Hamachi or similar. Setup may take a short while. Guides for doing so are available online. Online multiplayer was also possible via the Total Entertainment Network. The game was also supported by another online multiplayer service, Dwango. The multiplayer modes consist of the classic deathmatch, which is known in Blood as Bloodbath, and cooperative play. Bloodbath matches can be played on specifically designed multiplayer maps or on the levels of the various episodes. The frag limit, or time limit options are available to end matches, as well as the possibility to control respawn mode for weapons and power-ups. A feature of Bloodbath is the voice, an audio comment heard upon each frag, that punctuates the death of an opponent, often in gory and irreverent terms. The voice is that of Jake Hall, who was CEO of Monolith Productions at the time. Cooperative gameplay follows the lines of the single-player campaign, allowing several players to work together against the computer-controlled opponents on the levels of the different episodes. Plot: Blood takes place in an unspecified time period that often resembles WWI-era Europe and America. Caleb is a resurrected Wild West gunslinger or similar Pulp Fiction anti-hero, but the various levels contain elements from the 1920s, 1930s, and 1940s, in addition to futuristic and retro-futuristic technologies and a faint occult Weird West theme. Many elements are deliberately anachronistic, including weapons, pop culture references and other details. The game's sequel Blood 2, The Chosen, retroactively dates the game to the year 1928. The game's protagonist is Caleb, once the supreme commander of a cult called the Cabal, worshippers of the forgotten god Tchernobog. Although the backstory was not delineated in the game itself, the Monolith website and a Text document presented the few facts known about Caleb's early career. Already known as a merciless gunfighter in the late 19th century American West, Caleb joined the Cabal in 1871 after meeting Ophelia Price, a woman whose husband and son may have been murdered by the members of the Cabal. It is implied that she later became Caleb's lover. Together they rose to the highest circle of the dark cult, the Chosen, until all four members of the Chosen were betrayed and killed by Tchernobog for unspecified failures in the god's name. Many years later, Caleb mysteriously rises from his grave, declaring, "I live again," seeking both vengeance and answers. He must lay waste to many occult enemies as he explores worlds through various Cabal strongholds and hellish pits, to find and end the dark god Tchernobog. Dressed in a black trenchcoat and broad-brimmed hat, his eyes glowing red, Caleb immediately begins his quest, riddling Blood's world with bullets and dark humor. Caleb is a cynical, sarcastic, somewhat sadistic man, taking pleasure in killing almost anything that may impede his quest. Caleb has a slight attitude change between Blood and its sequel Blood 2, where he begins to show more tolerance for innocent bystanders. Blood is organized in 4 episodes, each consisting of 8 or 9 levels, categorized into 6 or 7 regular levels, 1 boss level and a secret level. Some locations are drawn to resemble 20th century cities, with civil buildings, museums, pubs, shopping centers and so on. A few levels are centered upon a particular location, like a mortuary, train station, carnival, sewer, hospital or lumber mill, and each is designed to include elements typical of these places. Maps built around moving vehicles are present as well. The third level is set aboard a moving train, for example. Several other levels have a typical Victorian or Edwardian architectural style, and this is used especially in some atmospheric haunted house levels. Levels with a more fantastic setting abound in the last episode of Blood, which takes place in several evil temples and even in a fully organic setting, whose walls, ceiling and floor are all composed of flesh and blood. Episode 1, The Way of All Flesh. Caleb's adventure starts with him rising from his grave in a tomb located in a graveyard of the Morningside Mortuary Funeral Home, stating, "I live again." In a secret area of the graveyard, is an open grave with the name Draven, and a picture of a crow on the headstone. In search of the first of Tchernobog's minions, the Gargoyle Chai, the protagonist moves to the rail yard and station known as Miskatonic Station, where he boards the northbound Phantom Express. Once aboard the train, Caleb fights his way from the locomotive to the caboose and back, finally stopping the train by blowing up the locomotive. Among the wreckage of the Phantom Express in the following level, the player can find a prison uniform, which has the name Kimball on it. Emerging from the wreckage, he proceeds through a dark carnival with several Cabal-controlled attractions, including a grotesque House of Horrors, which is featured as the episode's secret level. A water pool in the carnival area is then used by Caleb as a shortcut to reach one of the Cabal strongholds, where a droning message in the Cabal's language echoes throughout the grounds. Cutting through swarms of Cabal loyalists and other creatures, Caleb gains entrance to the Great Temple, a place protected by numerous underwater tunnels as well as several napalm traps and Cabal minions. A teleporter found in the temple leads the protagonist to Chai's altar, where Caleb will fight the gargoyle to the death, finally slaying the creature. Caleb finishes by lighting up Ophelia's funeral pyre to cremate her body, then after he approaches the slain Chai, points his shotgun at the creature's head and blows away the gargoyle's brains with a well-placed shotgun blast. Episode 2, Even Death May Die. Looking for Shiel, the second minion of Tchernobog, Caleb moves to the north on a small boat, uttering a famous quote from the movie Jaws. The player character boards a larger, icebound wooden sailing ship in the Arctic North and uses it as a gateway to a nearby lumber mill the Cabal has transformed into a crude human remains processing area. Then a snow-covered maze of hedges awaits Caleb, as he needs to find his way to the Overlooked Hotel, a haunted building with several nods to The Shining, including a frozen Jack Torrance in the garden maze, stating, "Here is Johnny." Recovering a set of mysterious tomes, Caleb may also find time to visit a snow-covered mountainous area, filled with Kabbalists and other even less reassuring creatures, before proceeding to another haunted building, a large two-story mansion with many rooms, a kitchen, gardens, a library, a cellar and even an indoor pool. Blowing a hole in the pool itself, Caleb follows an underwater passage leading to a facility that probably served as a support station for the operations of a nearby mine. The mine is the protagonist's true objective, since Shiel's lair is hidden below the frozen surface, under the bowels of the earth. Navigating the Cabal-infested tunnels, Caleb finally finds a large spider-decorated door leading to the hideout of Shiel, a dark stony cavern where the spiders feast upon the rotting corpses of their victims. In a climactic battle, Caleb defeats Shiel, crushing her with a powerful stomp of his boot, then proceeds to rip out and drink the heart blood from the nearly dead, cocooned corpse of Gabriel, another of the betrayed Chosen, thus gaining the power of his fallen comrade. Episode 3, Farewell to Arms. Back in a civilized area, Caleb has a new objective. Cerberus, now Tchernobog's second-in-command, must be eliminated. The first section of the episode consists of a town that has fallen under heavy airborne bombing. Few still live in the place, aside from the Cabal and its minions. Leaving behind the meat processing plant and the city hall, Caleb enters the sewers to reach the other side of the war-battered city. Emerging to the surface, the entrance of a hospital lies ahead. The interior contains patient rooms, a chapel, a morgue, an assisted suicide room and a baby carriage with a demonic hand sticking out of it as a tribute to its alive. From the chapel, access to the catacombs can also be gained. Once out of the hospital, the protagonist moves across an industrial facility, entering a nearby dam control installation located close to Cerberus Cavern. Caleb struggles his way through a difficult combo lock puzzle, then blows up the dam with explosives. The resulting flooding makes it possible to access the demon's fiery hideout. Several seals, guarded by hellhounds, must be unlocked before Cerberus makes his furious appearance from behind the stone walls. The two-headed beast does not prove a match for Caleb, who then fills the creature's stomach with many remote-controlled bundles of TNT and blows up the corpse, causing it to rain red over Caleb. Episode 4, Dead Reckoning. Caleb heads for the Hall of the Epiphany, where the Dark God is waiting. The first step is to cross a strange land with a mad scientist laboratory and a theme reminiscent of Frankenstein. He subsequently dives into an aquatic breeding laboratory, presumably one of the main locations where the gill beasts are grown by the Cabal. Later, bursting out of a water cistern, Caleb finds a charnel house, where Freddy Krueger's hat and sweater can be found on the wall, serving as a disposal site for dead creatures. The place has a nearby passage leading to a forested area with wood cabins arrayed around Crystal Lake. As Caleb roams the area, he may even discover Jason Voorhees' goalie mask and machete hanging on one of the walls. The exit from the area is reached through a toilet. Here the player can move immediately to a Cabal temple located well above the surface of a lava-filled area or take a visit to the Mall of the Dead, a shopping center acting as a homage to the film Dawn of the Dead, with similar looping elevator music, and zombies. Caleb then gains access to the inner temples defended by stone gargoyles and mother spiders, until he finally uncovers an organic-looking entryway to reach his former master. This passage leads to the level in the flesh, in which the walls, ceiling and floor are all made of living flesh. Caleb's stray bullets pound this wretched structure, causing the very walls themselves to bleed. Once out of this strange, horrible place, the protagonist ultimately reaches the Hall of the Epiphany, an otherworldly temple where he must once again face the previous bosses, Shyle and Cerberus, before battling the terrifying dark god Tchernobog himself. There, before facing him, Caleb finally learns why the Chosen were cast down. The dark god knew Caleb would return to him, killing anyone he ran into to take his revenge and thus gaining immense power, something Tchernobog wants for himself. As Caleb approaches the final showdown, Tchernobog's voice echoes and reverberates around him, "I have awaited you. Kneel before me," to which Caleb replies, "I'm gonna have to put you down." Caleb battles and destroys the dark god, ending his reign and temporarily stopping the Cabal. At the ending full-motion video, one of civilians, who worshipped Tchernobog, approaches Caleb and thanks him for liberation, in a worshipping manner. For this, Caleb immediately kills a monk with his Tommy gun before finally leaving the Hall of Epiphany. Expansion packs. The first episode of Blood was released as shareware. The full retail version of Blood on CD-ROM features all 4 original episodes and contains all the elements that were missing in the shareware version. The extremely violent content of the game prompted the release of a censored version of Blood with toned-down violence. 2 different expansions for the game have been released. Cryptic Passage was produced by Sunstorm Interactive and features a new 10-level episode. Monolith's official add-on for Blood is titled Plasma Pack and contains new levels, new creatures and weapons modes. A special edition collection titled One Unit, Whole Blood was later released, including fully patched versions of Blood, Cryptic Passage and the Plasma Pack in a single package. Also, strategy guides for the game have been published, namely Blood, the official strategy guide, and Blood, Unlock the Secrets. Plasma Pack, released in 1997, the Plasma Pack expansion adds several new features to Blood. A new episode of 9 levels titled Post-Mortem is included, along with 2 new multiplayer Bloodbath levels, one of which was modeled after Monolith's corporate offices. New enemies are added by the Plasma Pack, and all are featured in the extra episode. The new creatures include 2 new Cabal Loyalist types, Chrysalid Pods, the miniature Calebs, and a new boss, the Priest Beast. There are no additions to Caleb's arsenal, however several innovations are introduced. The Tesla cannon can now be wielded akimbo, while the napalm cannon and the live leech have new secondary attacks. The Plasma Pack also integrated a large number of bug fixes which had been previously addressed by several patches. Episode 5, Post-Mortem. After Caleb has learned the Cabal is training replacements for the fallen Chosen, he sets out to stop the cult's plans. The player character starts his new adventure beside a department store overtaken by several Cabal members. Clearing a way through his enemies, Caleb enters another shopping center which is connected to a processing facility of sorts and keeps investigating in his own fashion the recent Cabal uprisings. Next, the protagonist is lured to an ambush in a warehouse fully under the control of the Cabal. However, using the aeration conduits, he is able to outflank his enemies and proceed to the aqueducts of the city. A Cabal ship is docked nearby, but Caleb does not waste time and sinks the vessel. He also has the chance to visit some forgotten catacombs while at the aqueducts. Later, he moves into Cabal territory, wreaking havoc in a temple complex, then ruining the cult's plans once more by storming the inner temple, where the Kabbalists are preparing some kind of unearthly ceremony to worship their dark god. Satisfied the temples have been dealt with, Caleb enters the dungeon, a dark, creepy structure built to stop anyone trying to reach the training ground for the Chosen. A set of locked doors blocks the exit and Caleb is forced to wander across different areas to gather all the required keys, but in the end he reaches the grounds where the final threat awaits. In order to rest, Caleb must destroy each of the 4 Chosen in training and the beasts within them. Cryptic Passage was published by Sunstorm Interactive and is the only officially authorized commercially available 10-level add-on episode for Blood that was not made by Monolith. It should be noted that Cryptic Passage was released before Monolith's own Plasma Pack expansion. Episode 6, Cryptic Passage. Having heard news of an ancient scroll, Caleb sets out to retrieve it for his own dark needs. he arrives on the boat docks, which later open onto a large cave, a cabin and a lighthouse, structures overrun by the Cabal. Ahead, a large opera house is found, built in the tradition of the late 1920s early 1930s, where apparently the Phantom of the Opera is being shown. Without losing any time with the opera, Caleb moves to the Gothic Library, located in the midst of surrounding forests. There he barely escapes the minions of the Cabal after recovering all the keys required to leave the place. However, Caleb does not have time to rest, since strange rituals are taking place in and around the monastery. The protagonist must end them in the most violent and chaotic manner he can muster. A steamboat serves as an escape from the monastery, but it does not prove to be a gentle ride as the Cabal owns the ship. Finally reaching a quieter zone, Caleb finds himself at a graveyard whose relatively empty surface hides the crowded underground catacombs and tunnels. A passage may be taken by Caleb to reach a gloomy swamp, riding along the river on a boat where the Grim Reaper is the captain. Back on his path, the adventure takes the player character to the mountains this time, where both gorges and ghosts must be survived. The cultists hide behind every stone as Caleb makes his way across the cliffs to the mine, a dark place infested with phantasms, which is the only access to the castle where the scroll is hidden. When Caleb climbs the stairs into the castle, he is greeted by the Lord of all Nightmares, who proves to be nothing less than two guardians Cerberus. Between Caleb and the coveted scroll now lies a final battle between beast and man. Development began at Q Studios, an independent developer funded by 3D Realms, in parallel with a number of other well-known titles. Following the success of Duke Nukem 3D, development progress was made public starting in June 1996 with weekly updates on their website. It was originally scheduled for release in early 1997. Q Studios was acquired by Monolith in November 1996. On January 22, 1997, a press release announced that all rights had been sold to Monolith so that 3D Realms could focus efforts on Shadow Warrior, another build engine game slated for release the same year. Blood is one of two games using Build that takes advantage of the engine's support for voxel objects in the game world. Blood used this for weapon and ammo pickups, power-ups, and occasionally decorations, such as the tombstones in the first level of Episode 1. Cradle to Grave. A central feature of Blood is an abundant graphic violence, from which the game derives its name. Enemies can be blown to pieces, and the pieces often rain down on the player. Zombies' heads can be shot off and then kicked around like footballs, spewing fountains of blood. Enemies scream if set on fire or are otherwise injured, making sound an integral part of the violent atmosphere of Blood. The levels themselves are designed with the same spirit, as corpses, torture victims, and several grotesque situations are witnessed in the game. Collectively, these features caused public concern about Blood, leading to the release of a censored version. Intellectual property ownership. Monolith sold the publishing rights for Blood and its sequel to GT Interactive. GTI was later acquired by Infogrames, which has since been renamed to Atari. Monolith itself was acquired by Warner Bros. Entertainment, which owns the Blood trademark and intellectual property. Fan projects. After the release of Blood a Euro's sequel Blood 2, The Chosen, Monolith did not develop any further games in the series, in part due to copyright issues, since the Blood name was owned by GT Interactive. The source code to the game was not released, unlike Duke Nukem 3D and Shadow Warrior, two of the other games using the Build engine. Despite this, fans have developed their own projects using the Blood characters and aesthetic. Transfusion. Blood was partially recreated for the Quake engine under a project called Transfusion. Formerly known as Q Blood, the project was renamed to avoid possible legal issues with the Blood trademark owned by Infogrames Atari. Transfusion is currently still under development, with more recent releases using the Dark Places engine, but the multiplayer portion is complete, allowing the possibility of playing across the Internet. There are also plans to eventually get all the single-player game's functionality working, including all 4 original episodes, as well as those contained in the Plasma Pack and Cryptic Passage expansions. Important people inside the project have noted interest in completing a similar effort as Transfusion, for Blood Euro's sequel Blood 2, The Chosen. ZBLOOD ZBLOOD is a total conversion for Doom, using the ZDOOM source port. It adds enemies, weapons, and art from Blood and its expansions. It also includes recreations of some levels from the original game, though these have been heavily modified to work with limitations in the less technically advanced Doom engine. Blood CM work has been done to recreate Blood in Duke Nukem 3D, another game using the build engine, using the extended modification capabilities of the Duke 32 source port. One such problem is Blood CM. References. External links: Official Blood Monolith page, Cryptic Passage official website at the Wayback Machine, Blood at Moby Games, Plasma Pack at Moby Games. Blood Wiki article, Blood article on the Blood Wiki, the Post-Mortem, the definitive Blood fan site, Bloodline, the ultimate Blood source.